Okay. Joining. A lot of people joining. Cool. I'll wander over here, wait another minute, then I'll start chatting a bit. Okay. There are some waves. Hey. People from all over the place. Okay. Yeah, I need to see how I put this down. Well, I'm gonna wait another. Crap. That's crooked, huh? How's that? Does that look crooked to y'all? If I step back? How is that? I kind of like. Sorry, I'm just messing around. I'm just killing time, waiting for a few more people to get on here. How was that? Did y'all like that? That little zoom in, zoom out? Here come more requests to be in the video. How's that little zoom in, zoom out? One more time. You ready? Okay. All right. How was that? No comments on that, huh? You didn't like the action? You didn't like the extra juice? I'm winded now. I'm getting a cramp. No, I'm kidding. I do, it's the little things. You gotta entertain yourself. You gotta entertain yourself. All right. Yo. So many people like to request to be in the videos. I don't understand that. Great camera work. Thank you, capitalist artist. Yeah, you can tell I'm a professional, right? You can tell I am a professional. All right, so, yeah, I know, I'm kind of like, here in the studio. All right, let's ring the bell. Are y'all ready to get the party started? Just give me a yes, no, maybe. Okay, I think there's a lot of people on here, which is great. Feels like there's a lot of people on here. A lot of people joining at the same time. All right. So, where to go? Where to begin? What to say? Well, I have a few notes. I want to mention that a few things. Like the way I've been doing these since I started doing them a couple of weeks back is I'll take care of a little housekeeping up front, and then I'll get into maybe something going on in the studio. Maybe I'll show you something brand new that no one's seen, or maybe I'll talk something about a work that is of importance to me and explain why, and then I will finish up with some other comments, and then maybe take questions. I mean, I'm kind of doing it on the fly. I'm shaking up a little bit every week. I think my sister just joined. Okay, jeez. All right. Okay. First thing I want to mention that if you go to my website, there's a link. It's howardsherman.com, but there's also a link on my profile. If you go to my website, I've got some small works on paper of various sizes that are available if you click on the shop page. I appreciate it if y'all would take a little time and spend some time clicking around there. There are works of different sizes and prices. Take a look, share that with people collectors I'd appreciate it. Also, I wanted to mention, as I've mentioned before, there's a brand new press kit on the press page of the website. It's called Press Kit 2020. There's a link towards the top of the page, and there's also a button at the bottom of the page. So it's called Press Kit 2020. Click on the press page of my site. Once again, the link is in my profile. Okay, howardsherman.com. Very easy. Another thing, I have been doing a few individual one-on-one private critiques, and I wanted to find out if some of you would be more interested in group critiques. They'd be done via Zoom. I will not be doing them. I know someone who's an artist and a seasoned, super experienced art professor. He's taught painting and drawing to undergraduates and graduates for decades. And I know him well, and we have spoken about it. I'm trying to sort of help make that happen. Anyway, if you are interested in that, obviously the hourly rate would be significantly less because it's a group situation. I know that he's talking about capping it at a very low number. So it's the kind of thing you need to jump on quickly if you want to get in. If you're interested in finding out more about that situation, which I think would be very beneficial and easily accessible from a cost standpoint. But if you're interested in finding out more about that, send me an email. And if you can remember to do this, just simply put the subject line, because I do get a lot of emails, put in the subject line group critique. I will say that again. If you're interested in group critiques, these would be a Zoom-based group critique. I have some information about that. And if you send me an email, subject line group critique, I will be happy to give you all the details and all the information. If you start asking me questions on here, I'm not going to take them, okay? Don't start scrolling up the feed with all kinds of questions about time and price and this and that. Send me an email, subject line group critique. I think it would be a positive experience for those of you who don't want to work individually for an hour one-on-one. And maybe you want to do both. If you want to talk about both, that's cool too. Anyway, email is best regarding that, okay? Okay, what else? We're almost done with the housekeeping. Sorry, I have to refer to my notes here. Okay, I think we are done with the housekeeping. There's a couple other things I want to do. The first is I decided very impulsively, and I'm probably going to regret it, I decided to go ahead and show another brand new piece that I just finished. No one's seen it yet. Obviously, I haven't had it photographed yet or put it on the website or start circulating it. Ben Herring, find my email. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. Don't be lazy, okay? My email link is everywhere. I just said my website 2 or 3 times, okay? My email link's on my profile. Look it up. Okay. Sorry. I mean, I'm well rested and highly caffeinated, but there's certain things that still make me kind of aggravated. Okay. I'm going to walk over here and show you something brand new. No one's seen it. I'm not even sure if I was drinking the Kool-Aid or not, but you know, fuck it. Got a new work on paper. I think it's about 56 inches tall. And I'm thinking 35, maybe 35 inches wide. Anyway, here you go. I'm going to zoom in a second. I just wanted to back up and take the whole thing in. And it is paper and acrylic and marker. And I kind of did something a little bit different with this regarding how I came at the background of it. So it's not something I really necessarily, it's actually the first time I think I can remember really doing it this way, where I just sort of added and accented all this very specific noise around the background and then came back in with the form. And I'm going to zoom around. You can see some of the surface and texture here at the top. The other day I was on, I ended up somehow going down a rabbit hole, as we all do on the internet. And I ended up I was looking through someone had mentioned something about Van Gogh drawing on, maybe it was on Instagram. And I ended up flipping through on Amazon a Van Gogh sketchbook. And I liked the loose patterns of some of those sketches. And I incorporated that. I didn't incorporate his pattern, but I incorporated that idea into what I consider the background of this piece. So I did my own sort of patterned mark making in the back, but I varied it and sort of Shermatized it, if you will, in my own way. But it gave me a fresh way to start, and I got different results, I think, and I'm doing it again. I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna try that again. And so I think the key thing I said there was not to do what I just did, like some of y'all seem to want to do, but to find ways to get a fresh start, which means just maybe starting things differently every day, or trying different things, or doing what you do but doing it in a different order, shuffling the deck, right? I think that's really important. Anyway, more really zoomed in, close up stuff. You see the details? Are you feeling me here, people? Look at that. Huh. What do you think? Did it turn out all right? Not so much? Let's back up again, give you another quick look. I don't know, it's got this, now that I'm looking at it through the viewfinder of a phone, it's got this sort of clunky awkwardness to it, but I kind of like it, you know. There's Farah. We have a lot to talk about, Farah. Oh, we're gonna have to talk. It'll be good. Anyway, so this is a work on paper. I've been doing these larger works on paper in this new studio space. Not so many small ones. There's been a few small ones, but I've spent many years just sort of cranking through lots of small things, and I've been feeling like larger works on paper the last few weeks. I need to think about why. I just ask myself why, and I need to give that a little bit of thought. But anyway, one more thing I forgot to sort of focus in on, because I thought it looked pretty cool, is this sort of passage right here, you know. All this stuff's very intentional, you know, like where you see things that feel sort of, there's a specificity to it, even though it might feel kind of slapdash and spontaneous. And that's a very, I just said a mouthful there. I could talk about that for a while, but I'm not. Patent leather vibe, huh? Interesting. Anyway, okay, so y'all got that? Okay, good. So here we are. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned y'all asked me for some book recommendations. I mentioned this David Sally book. Can you see it? How to See. I think it's a really good book. I still recommend it. I was thinking about this the other day, and it seemed like when I was taking questions on here when I was taking questions on these Instagram lives over the last couple of weeks, I got the sense that I've got a lot of just based on some of the questions I got. I'm trying to think of a good way to phrase this. I got a lot of questions that felt like they were coming from beginners, people who are still in the beginning stages of their art practice and trying to figure out a lot of things. And the more I thought about that, the more I thought it might be an interesting thing to talk about some of the, in a very broad terms, talk about some of the bigger ideas from this book and some of the bigger ideas that I sometimes allude to when I'm speaking, and not go into other random things. You know, it's interesting because I get the sense I'm getting one crowd who's jumping in on the live, and then I'll repost it on the stories. A whole different crowd might jump in on that. I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong about I'm making some assumptions on how I'm gauging these demographics, if you will. But that's sort of my initial thought based on the questions. And then, and I forgot to mention earlier, by the way, I took last week's Instagram Live along with a couple of the other ones, and I've posted them on the press page of my site. So if you go to the howardsherman.com, the link is in my profile, and you go to the press page, there are last week's video, the week before that, and the week before that, and I somehow screwed up and deleted the one or two from right before that too. So sorry. Bob, a guy I know just someone I actually know in real life just jumped in, which happens once in a while. Someone I actually know in the real world. Hello from Argentina. Hey, Argentina. Okay, I think my sister's on here, and I think a good buddy of mine's on here. So now I'm like trying not to get self-conscious about this stuff. But anyway, so if you somehow missed, or you jumped in or you jumped out on the last 3 of them, I missed the first couple of them, I accidentally deleted them, but those are on the press page of my site. So you can go back and watch those in full. They generally tend to be 30 to 45 minutes. It depends on how many questions I take. I seem to get slammed with questions at the end, and at first I didn't like to deal with those, but now I'm trying better after I'm done getting everything off my chest and airing all my grievances. I'm kidding about that, but I'm starting to try and take those questions, or at least a few of them, until I get cranky and run out of steam, or you know what I mean. Okay, anyway, go to the press page to watch those videos. I'll try and if I feel like this one turns out good, I will try and upload that too. Anyway, and one other thing I forgot to tell y'all earlier too was that I do appreciate, I wasn't sure about these, the first 1 or 2 that I tried. I wasn't necessarily sure if I wanted to continue doing them. I don't particularly, I don't know. This is still sort of foreign to me in a way, and I don't really necessarily feel compelled to hear myself talk on Instagram Live a whole lot, but I'm getting emails from people saying thank you. And I'm doing them, first and foremost, in addition to the housekeeping, I'm doing them to sort of share a little bit and also help. I mean, the number one thing I'm trying to do with these, the overarching idea is to sort of bring some value to everyone by helping a bit and informing people about what I'm doing, and maybe in the process you learn a little bit more about what you're doing, and we all learn a little bit about what we're all doing. Did that make sense? I don't know. Anyway, back to the matter at hand. So what I wanted to mention today, now that I've done a little show and tell and all the other stuff, is based on the book. I'm going to paraphrase a few ideas that I've gotten from Sally's book and interviews with him about the book, and I think they're very important. I'm going to try and keep them pretty basic so everyone can kind of get them. And if this is a little too little for you, let me know. I'm happy to go on a deeper dive get a little bit more intellectually rigorous in the coming weeks or whatever. But for some of you, I think you'll appreciate this. Something simple that I just wanted to mention, like when you're looking at a painting or a drawing or a sculpture, you're looking at any kind of visual art, it's communication. It's communication just like any other kind of communication. You know, there's a syntax and a grammar to the paintings that you're looking at, and you need to be aware of that. And if you don't understand, I'm picking up some more notes here. If you don't understand that syntax or grammar, that's okay at first. I think if you're a curious human being and you're going to want to learn that syntax and grammar. But the number one thing, and I've said this always, is that you want the picture, the painting, picture, draw. When I say picture, I mean painting or drawing. You can even say sculpture, or just visual art in general, but sometimes I'll say picture. But you want it to tug at your heart before it tugs at your head. And I remember I was very fortunate. I had just gotten out of graduate school, and I had the solo museum show, small museum in Texas, Art Museum of Southeast Texas. It was great. And one of the things that stuck with me is there were little kids running up wanting to touch the paintings. And I mean, these are like 10-year-olds or something, because they're kind of colorful and cartoony, and they're made in a very physical, sometimes let's say scribbly way. And I never forgot that, and it's always stuck with me. I was very flattered and grateful because I always thought, and I still think, that I want my work to tug at your heart a few seconds before it tugs at your head. So for those of you who are struggling with vocabulary and understanding what you're looking at, remember that first and foremost. You want something to sort of tug at your heart a couple seconds before it tugs at your head. And at that particular moment, it might be a good time to ask yourself why. Why is that moving me? Why is it not? Why is it leaving me hot? Why is it leaving me cold? Why is it making me want to go run into my studio and make a painting? Why is it making me want to shut things down and go to dental school? I mean, whatever it is, ask yourself why. But I think that it's important to first and foremost start with asking yourself, is this moving me? Is it tugging at my heart for a second before I can even get a chance to kick into analytical thought? And so once you start there, then you move on a little bit more to learning what I alluded to a minute ago, which is the language, the grammar, the syntax, just like any other form of communication. And I think that's one of the benefits to a really good. That can be one of the benefits to going to a really good art school MFA program too. Is you learn those things that are important to broadening your understanding. Certainly that's not the only way to do it, but that definitely helps. Okay, and then something else. Forgive me for being a little bit stop-start with all of this. I'm kind of referring to a few notes that I took, but I'm going to sort of paraphrase things that he said and some notes that I've written. So once you start to learn about the syntax and the grammar that governs the communication, and decoding all of this stuff is a matter of intention and practice. We're all pretty good at reading cultural signs, but we're not as good at looking at pictorial events and wondering if they're authentic or how we feel about them. I think that it's still important, though, to go with your gut and trust your first impressions. And then what's also important is to learn the history around the work. And sometimes the artists don't even know who they're mimicking or copying, and sometimes they do. And I think the better ones can take that history and that information, and they incorporate it, and they mix it up and twist it up and reinvent it and add it to something else, and that's how you make something new. And then there's a whole ocean of people who you'll see on places like Instagram, like on here, who just are interested in copying what they've already seen. A lot of them selling those copies to people who either don't care or don't know themselves. There's a lot of people involved in the art world who don't know much about art. And you learn that as you spend more time here. They don't really know much about critical thinking or looking or have much of a sense of any of that. They're good at other things, which is what makes them of value to the whole machine of it all, I guess. But you need to sort of keep that in mind. And I kind of approach a lot of things with a sense of healthy skepticism too. In fact, I made a painting many years ago called The Healthy Skeptic, and I think that it's something to keep in mind. And the more you learn, the more you'll see what I'm referring to. I've been kind of on a kick the last few days about this sort of thing, and I'm going to be doing some social media posts around looking and talking and thinking and the criticism around it. And I'm not a critic, but I think that there is some value to the thinking that goes behind some criticism, even when I don't agree with it, when it's total bullshit or just false. So I think that that's something to keep in mind. Another thing that I'm going to paraphrase here from Sally is, a lot of times he would say things like, the criticism of the criticism should be entertaining. The articulation of the painting should be entertaining, even if it's not true. True or false, if it's if it's entertaining, it might get you to think, So I think that that's something to keep in mind. It's almost like treating it a bit like a work of art in and of itself. And then the last little part of this that I wanted to get into right now, again, I'm going to unpack this more in social media posts in the coming days. I think that looking at visual art and articulating and understanding it, it's hard. It's much harder to understand it and understand the criticism around it than it is to understand maybe the criticism around literary criticism, around the criticism around writing or other or sports or any other type of thing. And that's because those things are more linguistic. Art's not, They're of value though. Those other things are of value in learning how to read about, talk about, think about, understand art, because as human beings, we all tend to think in language. Anyway, that's kind of it. I kept that short. I could have gone a lot longer, but I always get a little, to be quite honest with you, I get a little bit self-conscious about my long-winded rambling, which I can easily do, especially after a whole lot of coffee. So I'm gonna leave it at that. I feel like, yeah, we're coming right in about 25-ish minutes, so I don't like to let these go too long. So what I will do, which seemed to work okay last week, and maybe it's because of my state of mind, I will, there's a chair here. I don't know why I feel like it's cool to do the chair thing, but I will take a seat and take some questions like I did before, if I can get situated. How's that? Good? Once again, I like being by the window because I don't get too much in the shadow and feel like I'm in the dark. Questions, comments. Ladies, don't send the quarantine nudes, okay? We're trying to keep it professional here. Okay. Giordano. I'm not gonna. I think place is a mess. I'm not really into showing it today. Trevor P. Warren. How do you balance order and chaos? I mean, it's a very broad question, right? I'm not sure if I've got a good answer for you or not. I think that you're overgeneralizing when you ask that question. Trying to think of a good way. The underpinning of everything I do is formal, so it's based on formalism, which means it's rooted in the fundamentals of drawing. And that's where it all starts and where it all ends. I hope that answers your question. Trevor? One other thing I'll say regarding that, and this is sort of interesting, is that I get people reaching out to me for help pretty regularly based on they've seen my work and they're responding to something in my work. And so that's the initial impulse for them reaching out for my help. And a lot of them aren't meant to, they're not meant to make the same thing that I'm making, So if they see, to be more specific, I'm trying to think of a good way to phrase this. Like they might see something very impulsive or chaotic in what I do and respond to that, and that happens quite a bit, and I get it. But you get to talking to them, and you realize that they're not the same sort of over-caffeinated, neurotic, smack-talking, loudmouth, who can sometimes be a little bit pushy as I am. They're a more well-balanced human being, a lot more calm, cool, collected customer, if you will. So while they might admire something they think is chaotic in my work, they're not chaotic. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just different. I have a lot of friends who aren't terribly chaotic, and I think that it's important to remember that. But the more important than that, Trevor, is the underpinnings of just drawing and knowledge of drawing in the work. And that doesn't necessarily mean I'm some expert draftsman. By no means am I that. But the basic fundamentals are certainly very important to me. I hope that helped. Again, I got a little bit off. I went a little long on that answer. Trevor P. Warren, hope that helped you. All these questions. Okay. Thank you, David. David, EV artist. Poor sauce. Is there a sense of adrenaline or paused action Is there a sense of adrenaline or paused action important in your work? Is there a sense of adrenaline in your work? I'm going to break that into two questions because that's a little bit, grammatically is confusing what you wrote. Is there a sense of adrenaline in the work, or is it important in the work? I think so sometimes. Sometimes it's just a byproduct, and if it looks like it's working, in the work, then I keep it. I don't know why you put paused action in quotes, and I don't really know what you mean by paused action. If there's some action in the work, I guess by the very nature of it being a painting or a drawing and looking at it two-dimensionally in real time, it's going to be paused. Don't really know what you mean by that. Okay, let's move on. I don't know. There's some questions that just can't. I'm not gonna. Okay. I hope y'all had a snack because I got a good one. No, I'm kidding. It's not gonna go that long. Okay, David EV Artist is coming back around with another good question. I think that y'all are gonna want to hear. What materials are you using? It's so fresh. How do you choose a specific material to get your feelings or communication across? Okay, well, one thing I'll say is I do use a lot of acrylic paint. Every now and then there's some oil paint in there and some other materials, but I tend to use a lot of acrylic paint. The number one reason, and I think this is something that's really important, and I had a professor in graduate school, wonderful professor, Ed Blackburn, who said something to me that stuck with me. He said acrylic paint lets you make decisions quickly. And he's right. And I can be very impatient sometimes. So essentially, it dries quickly, right? It's water-based paint. It dries quickly. Dries quicker than oil paint. And it's so funny. The simplest, most direct things sometimes ring so true, right? And they stick with you. And ever since then, it's been the main ingredient in my recipe. I know that's not terribly unique or specific to me, but I realize it kind of suits my temperament too. And it may not suit your temperament. When you say fresh, that's just the way, thank you. That is an intention, but that's just the way that I work, or that's an intention within my work. And I think it would be an intention within my work, regardless of the materials that I use. And regarding feelings and communication, there's no way of avoiding that. It's like your identity. A lot of people, especially now, absolutely now, but even 10 or 15 years ago, there's a lot of people talking about expressing their identity in their work. I don't care who you are. It's unavoidable to express your identity in your work, even if you're making a monochromatic just a monochromatic painting or whatever. That's going to say, everything you do is going to say a lot about you. And I mean, the way you walk into a room, the way you look at people or avoid looking at people, we're all animals here. We have instincts and thoughts that happen immediately regarding everything that we see and sense. So I do what feels right to me, and you should do what feels right to you. And it might look completely different than what I do, even if you like what I do, and hopefully it will look completely different. I hope that helped, David. Sometimes these questions need a little bit more, some of them need a little bit more unpacking than others because they bring up bigger ideas. I think that one was really good, though, and I think that one's really helpful. I'll take a couple of more. Man, it goes so quick. I mean, I could be on here for fucking hour. Jeez, I don't have the time to be on here for an hour. Okay. Another one that sort of piggybacks on David's is BC Noit. How do you choose colors? How do you choose colors if choice there is... Okay, never mind. That doesn't make sense. I don't have time to decipher. I thought that was going to be good. Color. I'll just say this. I'm not sure if you meant color choices, how I choose my colors. I don't know if that's what you meant or not, but everyone's got to, how do you choose what girl you're going to have sex with? How do you choose what you're going to order for dinner? How do you choose what you want to drink? I talked at length about some of the color choice. I'm sorry. I jumped a little bit there. I think I just get a little frustrated sometimes because I sometimes feel as though there's a lot of people asking me for permission to make what they want to make, and I should back up and not get so frustrated. I just, I'm not, quite frankly, I'm just not used to communicating like this on a phone when it comes to stuff like that. So I apologize, but I think that everyone needs to figure out what makes them tick, and that's going to help you pick out the color choices that you want. I've talked in previous videos at length about why I've chosen the colors I've chosen, and they seem to be recurring, and I will be more than happy to go into that at another time because it could be like a 5 or 10 minute thing. But if you feel like looking up the video, it's one of the other videos. I think I mentioned it for a few minutes and how I came to picking some of the colors I pick and how I use them and when I use them. And I will come back around to that topic if I need to, okay? Been hearing, I mean, I'm not proud of it, but I don't carry a sketchbook around me everywhere I go. I think that that's a great idea and it never hurts. But I keep drawings going all the time in the studio while I'm working, and a lot of the smaller pieces that are on my website and the shop page, as well as other areas of my website, a lot of those are just sort of drawings, they started as quick drawings that are going on while I'm working on larger things that take more time. So that's essentially become the drawing practice in my studio, and that might be changing as we speak. I'm always drawing and mark making in all the work that I do. So I guess there's this never ending perpetual cycle and motion's a good word, of drawing going on all the time. It's not necessarily a substitute for a sketchbook though. I'm not sketching, even though there's a sketchiness to some of the drawings that I make. I'm not keeping a sketchbook in that sort of academic traditional sense. I think that it's a great habit to have, though. I would recommend it. If I was an art professor teaching drawing, I would recommend it. Hope that helped. Okay, couple of more. Brandon Danger Ross, what is the best advice you got from one of your professors? I got a lot of great advice from him, and I think about it every month when I make my student loan payment. But one of the things that sticks with me is One professor said something that's a little bit cliche, but it's very true, which is it always starts and ends with the work. It starts and ends with the work. I'll say it one more time. It starts and ends with the work. And I'll tell y'all something else. Some of the quote unquote, whatever this successes, some of the biggest successes I've had, because that's a weird term, and I feel like it's getting weirder right now during the pandemic, how you define success. But historically, some of the biggest successes I've had have come from people looking at my images who I've, from thousands of miles away, I've never met them or seen them or know them. They're just looking at my images. And next thing you know, you're, getting contacted for a show or the cover of an art history book or whatever, or inclusion in a publication or exhibition or whatever. And so, yes, it starts and ends with the work. He was right. Remember that. Keep working. Good question, Brandon. JVK3, I agree. Okay, I've got someone on here who says they're deaf and they don't understand what I'm saying because they're deaf. And I don't know if there's some sort of if there's a hearing impaired feature on here. I'm not aware of it, so I don't really know how to. Some things that, like on television news feeds, they'll have a scroll, a translation scroll. I don't think that I can do that on here. I never even thought about it, so I apologize. I can't help with that. Let's say two more questions and then we'll call it a day. David Eve artist, thank you. Brooke E. Feemster, I'll tell you what, maybe I'll do a whole podcast about sort of business things. And if you have some questions about that, looks like you got some specific questions. If you want to email me, I'm happy to, if you send me 2 or 3 really thoughtful questions, I'm happy to sort of build a 20-minute talk on that, maybe even longer. I mean, I think like some professional practices could really help me too, Thank you, Funky Broaster. Okay, one more. Juan de Torres, I don't really know what you mean by prefigure. I do improvise a lot. I don't work from sketches. Juan, I don't work from preparatory sketches. I just sort of go for it. And the plan is to try and have as little plan as possible. I hope that answered your question. I think that's going to be... Okay. I think that's it. I think we're good. Don't you? Yes? Okay. Email me in summation before I take off. I appreciate your time. I hope I was able to help. Feel free to send me an email if you have any questions or comments. If you want to find out more about those group critiques on Zoom that I mentioned, send me an email, subject line, group critique. Visit the press page on my website. Visit the shop on my website. The videos are there. Works on paper for sale are there. Other things are there. The link is in my profile. Hope I was able to help. Think of things you want me to talk about. I'm happy to come back around. All right. I'll see you all later, okay? Thank you. Bye-bye.